Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We're here on the MSC cruise ship, and I'm here today with
Mykl.
Pleasure to meet you, Mykl. And today we're going to be learning a little bit about Mykl's background, his humble roots, and how he's currently cruising ship to ship. Mykl, what first got you interested in cruising?
Well, it came across my YouTube feed, and I started looking into it, and a week later I bought 3 tickets.
Phenomenal. And what cruise line did you originally start with?
NCL for 2 cruises, both transatlantic from Miami to London and London to Miami, with a 2-week where the ship went into dry dock.
Awesome. And what were some of the main things you liked with that cruise line, NCL?
Well, they had a solo cruiser program, and every day at 5 o'clock we'd meet at this little bar, and we'd get to know each other. We'd play games. They had an organizer. We'd play games, and then at 5:30 we all went to dinner together, and in a nice restaurant. And that's how we got to know each other and our names. And then when we see each other on the ship, we had something to talk about.
Do you still keep in contact with any of the original cruisers you met?
Well, actually, that's a good question. Yes, 4 guys, I have their contact information. And because we like to cruise solo, but we don't like to pay the solo supplement, and so we would, 2 of the guys travel together. They're from England, and because they want to save the supplement, so they don't want to have to pay extra for traveling solo. So that's what we talked about, and we said, hey, let's maybe get together on a cruise and not pay the single supplement, I think it's called.
That's an excellent idea. And going forward, we're on a four-night cruise here. What are your next plans for cruises after this one? Have you thought ahead yet?
Well, I'd like to, with a couple of guys, we talked about the Trans-Pacific. I like to go to Asia, Southeast Asia, and I don't like that 14 to 16 hour flight. I'm getting a little old for that. And so I thought, hey, I could cruise over there, take a couple weeks to get there, and would come refreshed when I got there.
What countries in Asia does that specifically stop at?
Well, not exactly the countries that I want to go to, but I can just have a short flight through those countries. They stop in Polynesia, Japan, I think Taiwan, Singapore, and probably then, I know all through Australia. But I go to the Philippines, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam.
Tell us about your pre-cruise traveling background. What countries have you been to prior to cruising, and what was your experiences like?
Well, when in 2000, I started doing world traveling with my backpack, and I would. I was in the Vietnam War. I was in Thailand for the war. And so I started by going back there, but I kind of took the long way. I went through Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore to get there. But then after that, I used to go to, Germany in the summer. And then I started going to not Europe anymore, that's good for the summer. But in the winter, it's too cold. I moved to Montana, and it's too cold. I rehabbed houses, fixers. and it was too cold to work there, usually without heat. So I would go for 2 to 4 months to Southeast Asia, to stay for winter and have a great vacation. So in the countries I went to would be Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia, Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia, Australia.
Did you meet any women when you were over there?
Oh, probably a couple. I married 2 Thai women. I had a baby with one. My daughter is now, will be 19 in a month.
How many times have you been married? Just the 2?
Well, I had my first love right out of high school. I had 2 daughters with her while I was in the military. And then the military kind of messed up my head. And then I headed west. And then I had a daughter with the Thai lady. And then I found a son on 23andMe, which I'm very happy to learn about, although he hasn't communicated back with me. I've tried many times on the website to communicate with him, but I don't know anything other than his initials.
Do you have any leads or guesses as to, with the initials, who it might be from or with?
Yes.
And you don't have to, divulge into that too much.
His initials are BL, and who I suspect it is, her last name is Leonard from Elgin, Illinois.
All right, wonderful. Well, if anyone sees this and they want to reach out to Mykl, we'll help you get in contact.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Because the last thing on my bucket list is I'd like to meet my son, even if he doesn't know that I'm his father.
Was there any other information you could get on that site that would help us lead to your son, or was it just the initials? Any cities?
Well, I got a vasectomy in 81 and haven't been potent and been with a white woman since then. And his mother is definitely whiter than I am because of the DNA that he has.
So that gives us a time frame.
I think he was born in January of '69.
Well, we'll definitely put something in the video here, and if anyone has any information...
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd like to. I really would like to meet him. It's the only thing I have left in life that I really want to do, but I'm just at a dead end. I've asked family members that are on 23andMe to contact him, and no response. So I suspect that he doesn't really know he's on 23andMe.
He could be getting bamboozled on that one, it sounds like.
Well, it could be his mother or his father.
Yeah, trying to dig up the past a little bit. Yeah. That's the fun part about these sites.
I'd really like to meet him.
Well, we'll definitely do our part and try to
get that out there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Then the other thing I wanted to ask you about is, you mentioned this was kind of your last thing on your bucket list. What were your prior items, and when did you accomplish those?
The last thing was I wanted to visit the island of Palawan in the Philippines, and I'd been wanting to for 20 years. But by the time I got there last October, 2 years ago, it had changed so much and been taken over by honeymooners and everything. It was just kind of a mess. The village was, but the actual islands and boat trips and everything was really wonderful. So that made it all worth it. But and now you can just fly into. They have an airport on the north end of the island now, or the next island from there, and so now it's real easy to get to it. But I have been all over the Philippines.
Any plans on traveling back there?
Yes, probably in a couple months.
Awesome. So when do you see yourself posting back up in Idaho? Are you headed there after this cruise?
Yeah, after this cruise, I got to fly back to Idaho, and then my brother's moving from Bolivia after 27 years down there. He's moving up to near me in Idaho, and I made him promise me that we'd go to Baja for a month and do some fishing on the beach with thousands of other people.
Well, that sounds wonderful. What's your fishing experience like?
Not much.
Any particular type of setup? Do you guys have a boat you're going to go out on? Or you're going to go off the dock?
We're just going to surf fish.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're going to have to buy some surf rods and everything. But the good part of the trip is not the fishing. But I just made him promise me we'd do that.
Yeah. That's awesome. When's the last time you saw him?
I saw him last summer. He actually came up to take care of me, amongst other reasons, while I was in chemotherapy for lung cancer from the Agent Orange from the Vietnam War.
Let's talk about that a little bit. Do you know exactly when you were exposed to the Agent Orange, or?
Yeah, when I was in Thailand in '72, I was there for the year. And they would spray the perimeter of the small base I was on in northeast Thailand, way northeast. And they would spray the perimeter so the snipers couldn't shoot us from hidden in the grass.
What's your thoughts overall of the Vietnam War, and has it changed from your thoughts now to when you were serving, or has it been more consistent, your opinion on it?
Well, in '68, I was part of the Chicago Democratic Convention protest against the war, anti-war protest. And then I got drafted a few months later, and instead of going into the Army or the Marines, which was the choice then if you got drafted, I joined the Air Force for 4 years instead of 2 to get out of the draft. So otherwise I would have never gone into the military, and looking back on it now, to go into Canada or Australia, knowing the situation now. And at the time, of course, there was a lack of news other than propaganda, so we didn't get a good story about what was going on in Vietnam. And so it was wrong. The military was wrong being there, and the government was wrong. And frankly, they sold me out as a young, expendable man in America. They were expendable. Men are in the culture, always have been, and now I see all that, and I see the facts. Bay of Tonkin was a lie that got us into the war, and so now I'm an anti-war vet, and the other vets don't like to hear that because they're trying to justify their killing.
So you've stayed pretty consistent, it seems like, in your thought policy on war. I mean, in today's day and age, we're on the brink of possibly, some say, a World War III. Do you see that happening? And what are your thoughts of how we can prevent that?
Well, I think we dodged that bullet with electing Trump, and he's a what would you say that expression? He talks peace and carries a big stick. What was that expression?
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, I mean, I know he's anti-war. He had peace in the Middle East. It seems like, Joe Biden came in and kind of tore the whole thing up and got us, all sorts of problems with funding that money to Ukraine and all that stuff that went on behind closed doors. Would you say Joe Biden's responsible for the situation we're in right now?
Well, he's not responsible for even changing his diapers, but I would say that the deep state, which controls Joe Biden and got him in instead of Trump, are responsible for making gazillions of dollars to put in their pocket, selling war equipment and starting wars and funding and supplying Israel with wars. I've been to Ukraine where the war is back in '96, and the Ukrainians are frankly anti-Russian for good reason, but they tried to kick the Russians out of their country back in the '90s, passing laws against the Russians, and then when they killed, when the Nazis from Lviv, Ukraine, Western Ukraine, Nazis from World War II, that group of people would go to eastern Ukraine where the Russians, the cultural Russians, Ukrainian citizens were, and they killed 14,000 of them. And then Putin finally stepped in and says, you know, protecting his people, which he thinks of as Russian people with Ukraine citizenship. So he finally stepped in, but that's part of the news that people don't know. They aren't told about. And frankly, the Ukrainians lost the battle on kicking the Russians out. And I would say the Ukrainians are pretty racist against Russians. I would classify that, always have been for good reason. But it's wrong to kill your own citizens to run them out of the country, in my opinion.
Putin, when we get into that, you know, back when Trump was in office the first time, seemed rather quiet. There was no talks of invading Ukraine, or minimal talks. Then Biden gets into office, and as you say, his handlers are behind him. Do you think that was his signal to start this whole thing when Trump got out of office?
Yeah. In fact, the whole deep state, if you want to call it deep state, you know, that seems to be a popular term. I don't have a better one. When they couldn't do any wars with Trump. Trump didn't start any wars. I mean, he shot 57 missiles into Syria that one time, but he didn't start a war, and he never started a war in the whole 4 years. That's the first time a president did that since Jimmy Carter, and I like that.
So I know when you were going back to your Vietnam days, you said you were protesting. Was it in Chicago?
Yeah.
And that was a Democrat-sponsored protest, right? Was that you used the word Democratic or something?
I was a Democrat. My family were Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, my family members my uncles were in the Daily Machine, the Democratic machine that controlled Illinois, mostly Chicago. And I learned about all that corruption and the terrible things they did at the farm. My dad grew up on this farm, and the family would gather there, and the uncles would get talking after they're drinking a little and talk about all the nasty things they did to the Republicans and anybody who didn't support the Democrats. And so I just thought that was natural. You know, all politicians did it, but it was really not. I found out later.
Is Trump the first Republican candidate you've supported and backed, or has it gone further back into like the Bushes?
I've never voted for a Republican, and I never voted for Trump.
Okay.
But I was out of the country, and frankly, I don't vote in federal elections anymore because I don't really recognize their power, and I can't. And if I voted in the election, then I would be saying I would accept the results of that election, and I don't accept them. But I would have voted for Trump the first time and the second time, but this time I'm a Kennedy Democrat. Okay, from long ago, JFK and RFK. And so when a Kennedy was on the ballot, I would have voted for him this time.
I think a lot of people recognize he was a much better candidate than both Biden and Kamala. Why do you think the party shunned him so much?
Because he's not a war pig.
That's That's quite straight to the point. I like that.
But it's not just war, they're making money at it. And knowing Ukraine when I was there in '96, the corruption was terrible. That country is very corrupt. And to think that Hunter Biden was on the board of Prisma, or whatever it's called, for what reason? And to think that that money wasn't coming back to the Biden family and all the other warmongers, I think is pretty naive to Ukraine, the situation over there. And you know the Maidan uprising, what was it called? The overthrow of the duly elected president of Ukraine in 2014. And then when Victoria Nuland chose the next president of Ukraine, our Victoria Nuland, the warmonger, Victoria Nuland, then I went, whoa, because I was there, I was paying attention to that, and then when that president was in long enough to do another election, and Zelensky was elected on the Ukrainians hearing him say he's going to solve the war with Ukraine and Russia, he was going to settle that, and he got like 70% of the vote. And as soon as he was in, Victoria Nuland and those pigs were on him to not make a deal. And they actually had a deal, and then what's his name from England, the Prime Minister, went over there and stopped it, and that was like in 2018 or 19, I think. And so this is all stuff Americans don't know about. You know, it's the propaganda machine really covers all that stuff up. So it's really wrong that we don't have a better news media to cover that. And I think that's one thing that Trump is going to clean up, is the news media. I mean, he's already bankrupting CNN. I mean, those people are terrible. And MSNBC is worse than CNN, but they're both going out of business. You know, they had to come back, and if they don't talk about Trump all the time, nobody listens to them. So it's kind of a funny situation that he's the news entertainment, and but he is pretty entertaining.
Well, we were on the topic of Hunter Biden, and I know we branched out to some other topics. I was just wondering to get your opinion on Joe pardoning Hunter after he said himself he would not do that.
Well, is he not a politician? Why wouldn't he do that? And of course, the sob story is, well, wouldn't you do that if it was your son? Well, Hunter Biden was, I think, I don't have proof for it, but we're going to get it, just funneling the money to the Biden family, either Biden's, Joe Biden's brother or Jill or whatever. They were getting the money, and then, of course, the politicians in Washington that are the warmongers making money on the wars, those people are making a lot of money in Ukraine. It's that money's, when we say we're sending millions and billions over there, it's billions, right? Yeah. That money is not going over there in cash a lot of times. It's the armaments, they're billing them for the price of the tanks and whatever they're sending over. And then the cash they're sending over is, there's an established corrupt machine in Ukraine that will send a percentage of that money back to U.S. senators. That I don't have proof of, but I think we're going to get it.
What were your thoughts on Trump's court case in New York and his 37 felony convictions? And do you think that was a legitimate case, or what are your views?
Well, with the porn star that he had sex with, that was long past what do you call it?
Statute of limitations?
Statute of limitations, yes. And long past that. And what they did in New York is they said, we're gonna temporary set down the statute of limitations, and anybody with a crime, blah, 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 that would fit into the category with Trump and Stormy Daniels, that they would set aside the statute of limitations for 1 month. And of course, in that month, Stormy filed, and otherwise, they set aside the statute of limitations. Okay, so then she could file, then they can do all that. And then they also set aside, was it at the same motion where he paid his lawyer, Mykl Cohen, $120,000, he billed him for work, and I don't know, 100 of it or something like that went to pay off Stormy Daniels to shut up during the election, to not say anything to make him look bad. So it was a payoff, and they scored it as, in the taxes, they scored it as a lawyer fee, and it was really a sex scandal payoff. So it was wrongly categorized in his income tax statement. But my God, as much as they've gone after him for taxes, that dude is cleaner than I am on taxes. You know, I can't believe that they didn't get him for something better than that. That's it? The guy's got property all over the place. He was a New York Democrat. Come on. He was a New York Democrat property developer in New York. If you don't pay off the union, you don't pay off the Democrats, you don't pay off the bridge monopoly, whatever it's called, you don't pay all those people, you don't get anything done in New York. So, but evidently, if they would have brought those things up, then all those people would have gotten in trouble for bribery. So, it's a pretty funny deal if you ask me. I don't have a TV and never had one. And so I don't know about The Apprentice and all that stuff. I think I've seen part of a show or something, but I never watched TV. So I don't know about his #1 show. I think #1 show on TV for years and years, right? The Apprentice, I think it was. And to have him, he's got to be a showman. And then to develop real estate, I was in real estate, and into the stuff he did, you don't do it without greasing some palms all the way around. Not in New York, for sure.
Well, it's been a pleasure getting your thoughts on a lot of various topics, and I certainly hope you enjoy the rest of your cruise, and it was great to meet you. Thank you for your time.
I enjoyed it.